Walt, unbeliever. You've returned. You've all returned. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I had to pull out my little vinylmation of my great movie ride. I'm going to put it right back here. Welcome to the Tammy Tuckey Show. This is like the first episode we're doing live. So my name is Tammy Tuckey. Hi, welcome. So glad you guys are here tonight. We got a lot of people saying hello. Beth, China, Robert, John, Lissa. Hi, everybody in the chat. It's so great you're joining us this evening because I'm very lucky because I've interviewed over 300 guests on my other podcast. And this is just really exciting because I get to do these live conversations now, and you get to join me and come on this journey as we all ask our questions, our burning questions about Disney attractions and other films and TV shows. So tonight, we're going to be celebrating the Great Movie Ride with 12 lovely Imagineers. So for our first group, because we're going to do this in 2 hours. So from 8 to 9, we'll have a group, and also from 9 to 10. So slowly but surely, let's bring everybody into the chat. So we're going to bring in Tim. Hi, Tim. Can you hear me? Can I hear you?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. I just wanted to make sure I could hear you. So we have Tim, and then we have Doug. Hi, Doug.
Hey, Tammy.
And then, of course, we have Chuck.
Hey, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Hey, Chuck. And then we also have, where are we? Eric. There you are, Eric.
Hello, everybody.
I can see you. And finally, we have Brock.
Hi, Tammy. Good to be here.
I'm so excited to have you guys on the show. I think a lot of people on Twitter have been asking, they always tweet about the Great Movie Ride. That's like one of the things I see the most of all the Disney attractions that are no longer there. It's one of those favorites for a lot of people and for the right reasons, obviously. So before we get started with like questions and things that I have for you and that our audience has, I thought it would be great to just go through the line of what you did for the actual attraction so we can so the audience knows specifically what you worked on. So Tim, why don't you get started?
I was one of the designers on the initial ride. I worked a lot on Alien and on Indiana Jones, and I wandered around a lot, but yeah, from the beginning to the bitter end.
You made it through.
I made it through.
And Doug, what about you? You've been on my show before, so I'm just glad to welcome you back. Hi.
It's good to be back. I was the audio animatronic animator on the show.
He made the magic happen with those AA figures. Brock, you did something special, but it was more so for the building, right?
Well, I worked both phases of it as far as the facility and the show. I was the architect for the Chinese theater outside, being able to go to Hollywood and study that one very carefully and go to historical pictures so we could reproduce it there in Florida. And then I was also the lead show set designer, overseeing the designing of the sets and all the drawings that had to be done to build the sets for the entire show.
And Eric, what did you do?
I was the overall creative lead and art director for the attraction, and it was the first attraction that I had the creative lead responsibility for. So it was a big moment in my career. A lot of things before at Epcot and Disneyland and Magic, but starting this part and being in charge of it was really a life changer for me.
And Chuck, you wanna end it for us for right now?
Yes,
for the intros?
Sure. I'm the imposter because I was not on the original team at the Great Movie Ride. I came on board after the ride had opened and worked on some of the redesign issues with Tim and Eric. So I'm the guy who put together the redo of the Busby Berkeley scene, the Anubis scene, and all of the things that I saw a lot of people talk about for many years afterwards.
So the Great Movie Ride, for people who don't know, I pray to God there's not that many people who don't know what the Great Movie Ride is. So the Great Movie Ride was this attraction that opened in 1989 with the theme park, Disney's MGM Studios. But instead of just observing the films or like a film about the films, we, as the audience, as the tourists, we went into the movies and we got to experience all the movies, from the romantic to the horror to the Western to the gangster scene. There are so many wonderful points of this attraction. So I thought for each group, we'll go through the entire attraction, like step by step, room by room, because I'm sure all of you have different experiences with the attraction itself. So obviously we start out in this set kind of set up as if, you know, we're about to shoot something. CB, the director, says action, and our car moves forward to the Footlight Parade Singing in the Rain segment. So let's talk about that first, because from what I know, the Footlight Parade was even more extravagant when it first opened before they kind of tamed it down. So does anybody have any stories about those two segments?
Well, I'll just, before everybody else, I'll say that, you know, and Tim and Brock were both there too, but it was one of the most difficult parts of that show to conceptualize was the musicals, because as everybody knows, the musicals are so broad, and so many different, you know, Gangster's kind of specific other than the time period, and Westerns and that kind of thing, but musicals, wow, where do you start, where do you begin, and how do you pick, and how do you choose, and then how do you find the rights to use the ones that you want to use? So that was one of the biggest challenge for us. And then Tim was really, you know, instrumental in doing that. And of course, Buck does the sets. And then Chuck, I want to head it to talk about the challenges that we had, because, you know, again, a musical, singing, dancing, beautiful people, all that stuff is really a challenging thing to do in a ride format like we were challenged to use.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, no. I would only assume that the musical part is the hardest part. A lot of people know Singing in the Rain. I feel like Footlight Parade might not be as well known, but it's like one of the beginning talkie musicals. So you have to start somewhere. And I think that it was the video footage I've seen of the extravagant original version had the 3 divers, and the turnstile was turning. So you could see all the girls on the what was it called? The cake?
The wedding cake, yeah.
The wedding cake. Yeah. There were a lot of the girls on the wedding cake. So, and then you had the Singing in the Rain segment, which goes right into another movie musical, Mary Poppins, which we all know and love. So what was the difficulty in choosing that specific song? Because I would assume that it's difficult because you have the chimney sweeps, but you also have Jolly Holiday and Spoonful of Sugar. There's so many great musical segments. So how did you choose on that specific one? Do you
First
remember?
of all, it was really easy to get the rights
Yeah.
for Mary Poppins.
It was, of course, you know, it was one of the Walt Disney Company's stable of films. But one thing that I and another who was working on the show did is we had a meeting arranged for us with Julie Andrews in Century City, her office, and we went to Century City and presented her a very, very preliminary layout of the ride and talked her through all the scenes. And she said, "This sounds lovely. I'm on board. Have my support 100%." So that really cinched that we were going to do Mary Poppins. After you get Julianne's agreement, you can't say, "Oh, never mind." so that was it. But the other thing I was going to say is with Footlight Parade, you know, when and Tim, you can confirm this too. We didn't do the Great Movie Ride doesn't go chronologically in time, but one thing we wanted to do was start out like the load area, or the first scene that you walk into after you leave the Chinese theater is the Hollywood Hills. But if you look up into the hills, it said Hollywood Land. So we wanted to set it at a time in the 1920s, 1930s when the film industry was very young. And so we thought produce with a black and white film, and because of musicals, it would be a black and white musical, would be a way to sort of set the sort of moving through time for the beginnings of cinema to the end. We didn't want to do a split movie. That would be boring in a ride. But we thought doing something that paid homage to black and white. But we didn't do it in black and white. It's not completely black and white. We imagined what the art director who was working with real flesh and blood people and, you know, all that kind of stuff would have imagined that he wanted it to look like. So we chose silver and blacks and grays and things like that to evoke that period and stuff. And then we move into color a little bit, between Kelly and Singing in the Rain, and then full color, of course, with Mary Poppins. So there's a progression through the different years as well as the musical styles. I'll just say before I stop, one of the that I was privileged to do is we were actually, Gene Kelly himself came to our production facility in North Hollywood to see his figure perform before we packed him up and to Florida. Gene stayed in Hollywood. His figure went to Florida. And so that was another really memorable moment while I'm working on that attraction for me.
Well, I'll put a pin in there because I want to come back to that specific topic about the AAs based on real life people. So we'll come back to that. Did anybody else have anything about Mary Poppins or Footlight Parade or Singing in the Rain before we move to the Gangster Alley?
Does anybody else? Because I have one more thing I want to call Brock out on.
Well, I've got something, but I want to hear what you have to say about Brock.
Every time Brock, you'll laugh if you when you remember this, but it's something that every time I see this word, I think about working at the Great Movie Ride. Brock was fortunate enough to be able to go to the studio and pull this show drawings for all the sets for the chimney sweep scene from Mary Poppins that was built on the soundstage. And he was poring over these original drawings, trying to figure out which ones we should borrow and then create for our chimney sweep, or top of London scene. And he kept looking at the pages and saying, all these pages have TIMO printed on them, TIMO. So what is TIMO? Thinking, and we said, I have no idea. Kept trying to think what TIMO would be. We're looking through dictionaries. There's no Google at this point. Look, what does TIMO mean? We find Brock on one of the papers over says, these sets were omitted from the film and never used. So every time I see the word, omit in certain contexts, I think of Brock and his aha moment of realizing that TIMO backwards is omit.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about Brock, I have a video for you, Brock. Let's take a look right now. Hold on.
Okay.
The grandest and most ornate building on Hollywood Boulevard is the Chinese Theater.
It's our castle at the end of Main Street. In our case, Main Street is Hollywood Boulevard, and the castle is a Chinese theater that was built in the late 1920s in Hollywood.
As the home of the Great Movie Ride, this Chinese theater differed in construction from its predecessor in that its roof was built separately from the building and hoisted into place.
That was a very exciting time for us as we had to maneuver a very large structure that it is, weighing 22 tons, maneuver it around inside the courtyard, which was already crowded with this large 150-foot crane that had to lift it into place. It sits within a half inch of where we expected it to sit, and that's not too bad considering the size and weight of the thing. It's not something that's easily worked with.
Look at you, Brock.
Yeah, it's when I had hair and it wasn't all gray. But yeah, that was a lot of fun doing that part of it, and I'm glad you found the footage with us christening it. As we decided at the last minute we're going to lift that up, we're going to make it something special, and christened it with champagne and moved it into place.
And that was good luck because it's still there, right?
Yes, it's still there. Hasn't fallen in.
So we go into the gangster scene, and I think this is probably, correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest set in the attraction because there's so much space that you kind of go around, and there's so much to see in here. And for me, I've been looking at different photos and pictures and things I've missed when I was riding the attraction that people picked up. So we come into the gangster scene and we have a big shootout happen. And this is where sometimes the story will deviate depending on what car you're in. If there's two cars that are at the beginning of the ride, the first car is the gangster scene car and the second one's the Western, but usually it's just the gangster scene car. So the gangster scene, let's talk about that specifically because that has James Cagney in it as well too. I think he's calling.
I apologize.
It's okay. Pick it up. He'd probably heard me.
No. I'm sure it's my car warranty or something like that. I could talk about the gangster scene a little bit. I think the lead designer on that was Karen Armitage on that particular part. Mm-hmm. But we watched a lot of, especially Warner Brothers films, because Warner Brothers was the studio best known for doing gangster movies in the 1930s into the early 40s. So it was James Cagney, it was Humphrey Bogart, people like that. So we would look at The Public Enemy, we would look at Dead End, and Dead End is a really good resource for set design from Warner Brothers. It's all urban, it's all New York. And so we really tried to capture that kind of feel, that kind of dank, slum-like feel.
Right.
I was creeped out.
Also, what we did is said we poured over, I mean, hundreds of movies. And this is, I got to set the tone for the audience here. This is before DVDs. This is when video cassettes were, that was about it, or watching films on traditional manner. So there was one obscure shop in, I think it was North Hollywood, California, that had all kinds of bizarre, very obscure videotapes. And we would go there to find movies that we knew about, but we couldn't find anywhere else. And they weren't sold in the stores anymore, that kind of thing. But this is called Eddie Brands. Something other. Michael Sprout would know all about it when you talk to him. But anyway, we looked at all these videos, and what we did in the gangster scene is we chose a lot of moments to be for the real diehard fans, for the almost, I would say, probably 90% of the shops and businesses and hotels and things that are in that scene are referenced to another movie, a particular movie. Just maybe a quick shot of somebody walking down the street, and there's the whatever hotel in the back. We wanted to have it just have this layer upon layer of richness of different movies, not just specifically the scene you're watching, but just fill it with, so you're on a soundstage with hundreds of movie memories, not just one or two.
Yeah, this went down to very small details. Like I think there was a stack of bootlegger whiskey crates, and the logo on the crate, I think, was taken from one of the Warner Brothers movies. So
yeah,
we sold
it's a real one.
Yeah,
yeah, and even the gangster shootout car that arrives, that was something that we did, but the license plate number on that car is the day of St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which famous. So we try to put little hidden, they're not hidden Mickeys, but hidden varieties things inside for people to find.
I love it. And I just want to mention, I forgot to say at the beginning of the hour, if you have any questions for anybody during the live stream, please put it in the YouTube chat section. I am monitoring it. So when you have a question, we'll bring it up on the screen and interject it in there. So we finished the gangster scene. If you're in the first car, obviously the gangster kind of takes over the car. The tour guide hides. But originally there was something different with the tour guide that happened. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that changed in the beginning processes of it, or?
Well, I think he was actually shot, wasn't
he? Yeah. It was well, it was kind of a combination of today we probably never even consider having somebody shot in a Disney ride, but 35 years ago, whatever it was, we wanted to be kind of authentic, and we had this idea. Mocked everything up at our North Hollywood production facility, and we had guests come in they were cast members from Imagineering would ride in these cars and push through to get the timing right. So Brock on the timing, and we could work on the staging, and we brought some operations people up from Disneyland to perform the gangster and tour guide role to see how it worked, and Michael was directing it, and we just said what's going to work, what's not going to work. When we got into the field and started really playing with this scene, we realized it was really hard physically for somebody that wasn't a professional actor doing it one time a year to fall down and look like they were really getting shot and dying, and especially not to hurt themselves. And so, these were not professional actors. They were ride operators of the level of the Joe Cruise and other things like that. But still, I think we expected too much from what our performers were able to do. So in order to not make them look foolish, we toned it down. So there's something that people could achieve and have a believable outcome without them either hurting themselves or not being able to do it at all and having the scene fall apart. So it's one of those things. We would have tested it out. If we had done a Broadway show, we would have done the same thing to see what worked, didn't work. But they're doing that Broadway show one time a night, 5 nights a week, or whatever it is, as opposed to 600 times a day, 365 days a year. So there's a lot more constraints than you might think placed around this kind of notion.
Yeah.
I'm muted. I said I didn't think of that. Safety is a big concern. So good on that. But apparently there's some pictures of one of the shirts was sold online where it has like a pocket and you rip it off and it looks like you've been shot. And I do have a picture of that. We'll see that at some point in time, which I always thought was fascinating.
That was the original concept, yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. I love that. So our gangster is taking control of the car. We're going into that Western scene. We see John Wayne on the left, and we see Clint Eastwood on the right. And bank robbery happens in between, unless you're in car number 2, where a bank robbery does happen, but you get kidnapped by the cowgirl. So this scene is so reminiscent of all of these different Western scenes. So in this particular room, did you guys have a specific prop or set that you really enjoyed seeing or being put together?
Well, I'm you guys, please, everybody else talk too. But this coming back to me a bit. But one, it's backing up just for a second about the Western scene. One of the key things to getting this entire attraction off the ground was getting the cooperation of the movie stars and actors and actresses that we wanted to portray it. And we, through a connection, an intercompany connection, we had a connection with John's family. And so the first meeting that we ever had was with Michael Wayne and Tony Wayne LaCava, who are John Wayne's children. And we pitched the idea of the great movie ride. They, to make a long story short, they said, yes, we'd love to do this, but let us know how we can help you. They provided all the original artifacts from John Wayne's estate for us to copy, his buckle, his gun, all those kinds of things. But really getting John Wayne's family to agree to do this, because he is such an icon, if not he's one of the biggest icons in Hollywood, was the key to getting everybody else to eventually say yes. And so that, if we could walk into the room, for example, to Julie Andrews and say, oh, and John Wayne's family has agreed to do this, then she'd say, well, how could I say no now? So it's really this hard golden card that got us to be able to talk to everybody else. So that's one of the significant things about the Western scene. But really the set was really an amalgamation of, like I said, the Gangster scene of all kinds of different references for a lot of movies from a lot of different studios. And we would create a home where not only John Wayne, but Clint Eastwood and any other, Westerns would fit home at. And I know Doug gets to work with Michael Wayne on programming John Wayne.
Yeah, they didn't. I remember they were very helpful. There wasn't any particular thing he said that's a nuance or anything. I don't remember any of that, kind of micro detail, but they were one of the most supportive of the families that I remember.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
Doug, you reminded me one of the things that one of the first things Michael Wayne said after we started working on this is he said, you're going to have to find somebody to my father's voice, and he said I'm the perfect person, and so he, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It was Chad. Everett. Tim, do you remember? Chad Everett. He said Chad Everett does my father's voice better than anybody else, and we couldn't. Everybody knew who Chad, except me. I just forgot it. Who Chad Everett was. And so Michael Wayne introduces Chad Everett. You can ask Mark Eades about this later on if you want to, but Everett did the voice of John Wayne in the great movies, right? So movie stars supporting movie stars within a ride about movies. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I actually have a clip for you guys. You ready for another one?
Sure.
Here we go.
Set was hammered out. Disney audio animatronics experts were challenged to do their part in the creation of Disney's most ambitious ride-through attraction ever. The demand for sophistication had never been greater, because for the first time in history, audio animatronics players would star opposite live actors.
For all the audio animatronic figures, we held voice auditions at the studio in California, and hundreds of actors auditioned, and we narrowed it down to a few, and in some cases, for instance, with the Waynes and the Cagneys, representatives of their family listened to the tapes with us at our recommendation and approved or disapproved the voices.
I hightail it out of here. Go right ahead if that's what you're a mind to do.
It's a performance. It's more than just a statue. I mean, he moves, he talks, and it was a little eerie for me, frankly.
well, we'll come back to her. Hold on. Michael is now here. I'll bring him in. But look at you, Eric. You were so great. Hi,
That's
Michael.
so weird.
Hi there.
Okay, so you guys, Tammy did not set me up for that. I had no idea that she was going to play that. So happy to introduce Doug and the Wayne family, all the same conversation, have that clip to support it. So now you know I wasn't making it up. But I want to say one thing quickly. Can you guys? I don't know if you could see that.
Oh wait, I'm going to make your screen a little bit bigger. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Can you?
So this, you're seeing my phone glowing in it. You can see the Gangster car on the top and the ride vehicle and the guy being shot right in the middle. See that?
Yes.
So that was a painting that was done by Frank Armitage, who is a legend artist, and he did this, one of the earliest concept renderings for what Great Moments in the Movies was called at that time was going to be. And that was, as the narrator of that clip you just showed said, one of the keys to what we wanted to accomplish this show was to, for the first time, blend live actors and animatronic figures together, and also have an out, as you mentioned before, Tammy, that isn't what you expected, unless you've got it right 100 times, then you what's going on. But it's like that's what happens if you see a movie 100 times. So anyway, but that painting really sort of was one of the things that sold the idea of this ride.
It's a beautiful portrait. And Michael, I just wanted to welcome Michael Sprouts here. He's a show writer. And we have a couple of people who have been posting along. Some people are a part of the original cast, the original tour guides who are watching tonight. So hi there. We have one person here, opening 89 crew here, loving this trip down memory lane. So with that aspect, somebody wrote, "Hi, Lynn, a truly magical experience being a part of it." I'm so glad you guys are watching tonight. So, and it's great because that's a fun part for the cast members because they feel, they're bringing the magic to life. And Michael, they're saying some of your words. So when you're writing the script, what was that like? Because I'm sure there were so many changes because there's so many different films going on and being accepted and put in.
Yeah, there were a lot of changes. One of the big challenges in an attraction like this is timing. We have the size of the ride vehicle, and you can write all the words you want to, but if they don't fit, it's not going to work. So you ride around in the vehicle a lot, and the cast has to be very patient because we keep changing it.
Yeah.
How many script changes overall do you think you had?
It's too depressing to count them. We have a joke, when the rides are ready to open, we call it a final script, and it's not a final script at all. It just keeps after it's open, it keeps changing even.
Well, we move from the Western scene as soon as we we're still the gangster or we have the bank robber or the cowboy cowgirl. We move into the scariest moment of the ride, the moment I feared for all the years that I ever rode it. Even when I was in my 20s, I was scared. I still am. It's the alien sequence. Okay, go ahead. Tell me whatever you have. I'll hide behind. Like I always would hide, and sometimes the tour guides would laugh at me because I'm like this the whole time. But
One of the good things about Alien was it covered two film genres. We were trying to get as many different types of film in this ride as possible, and Alien checks the horror box and the science fiction box. A critic called it a haunted house in space, which is what it is. So it seemed like a natural, and it was also a big box office hit, and a good scary movie. So, and we only had to do one other figure, and that was Sigourney Weaver. So that kept the cost down.
Easy peasy.
And I helped to put her costume together. I bought all of her patches and things on her jumpsuit, actually at fans movie souvenir sites. You could get a set of those patches that were pretty accurate to the film for like $15. So that kept costs down too.
Can you guys see my screen? I'm trying to share some pictures. I don't know if it's showing up. Can you guys see it okay?
Yeah, we can.
You can't see it?
I can't.
I can't.
I'm trying to figure out how this works. I'm trying to make sure it does. Let me try it one more time because I have some pictures of the alien because I'm so fearful of it.
All I see is a bunch of dopey old men.
Yeah.
You.
Well, and the,
Well, I have a
Are
scary-
we here for the Snow White movie?
except for Doug and Chuck, this looks like a Santa Claus convention.
Yeah.
Great. Relegated
Well-
to an elf again.
Well, here's a shot of the alien. I'm sure, hopefully, our audience, please let me know if you can't see this, but it looks like some people can see it. But look at this one. Okay. Oh my goodness. Just
Yeah, we're not
scary. Yeah, these were some stage shots, obviously. And this kid looks just as scared as I do. But yeah, this ride was very, very. This part was always scary for me. But when I think somebody said they had a story about Sigourney Weaver getting her approval. Was that you, Doug?
She couldn't make it, but her dad, Pat Weaver, approved her. I think he was the final approval on her schedule.
Yeah, he was, as I remember, he was the head of NBC.
Yeah.
And was friends with Marty Sklar. So it was truly one of those kind of Hollywood deals. You know, I know someone, so I'll talk to them and kind of things. Is the way Hollywood works. Hollywood way worked on our ride too in some instances.
And Pat Weaver not only started the Today Show, he also started the Tonight Show and a bunch of other things. So he was a real pioneer. So it was quite a thrill to meet him. And Sigourney Weaver, I believe, was in Africa at the time.
Yeah, she's not able to do it for us, right?
Oh, she was doing the Diane Fossey movie about gorillas. Yeah.
One kind of a thing that just popped in my head that was interesting down the line on the alien scene is when that movie was filmed. It was when CRT or cathode ray tube televisions were the only thing. There were no flat screens at that point, and so that's what we used, and they were still being used in the 1980s. So that's what we put in that scene. And at one point, our maintenance folks says, we can get these much easier to maintain, better looking TV screens that we can put in their flat screens that take no maintenance. They don't have anything they can't break, blah, blah, blah. I said, but that's not authentic to the movie. We have to use these kinds of screens. So the proposal was to take flat screen TVs and resculpt housings and domes to put over them to make them look like the old-fashioned television screens. But that's how much detail A, Disney, and B, us Imagineers to keep the authenticity. Just go out.
Yeah.
Ah, there's the pictures.
There's a picture.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I muted myself again. I got it to work. Sorry, I was trying to figure out. I was like, this is not working, but there it is. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so you guys can see it a little bit more. Is that a little bit better? Hopefully. But yeah, there's the alien. Sorry, everybody in the audience. Everybody in the audience is like, we can't see a single thing. But here's another shot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Evil.
They are terrified.
That this shot here, I remember this is one of our pre-opening shots, and at the time I was working in tech services at the Magic Kingdom and got on the crew to help with this shoot and do lighting and such, and as always happens, the performers that we have here were basically some park employees and other folks, and we had positioned the figure, got the vehicle in the right position, and we're just holding this shot. And some of these poor actors were sitting underneath the goo effect when the alien had to drool. And of course, they were, when you drive through it, you get sprinkled on it. But when the vehicle was stopped, we couldn't stop the effects. So these people were trying to look scared while this goo was just running down their back and their face. And after a while, we had to stop, towel everyone off, and start up again with the shots because everyone was just getting drenched with all this fake alien goo.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
The set work there was very heavily aged because the Nostromo, the spaceship, is a factory ship basically. And I'm not sure this is true. It might be apocryphal, and maybe Michael or Cory Sewelson could confirm this, or Eric. One night, maintenance came in and cleaned a lot of it off. A lot of the aging.
Yeah.
Oh no!
If it's not true, it should be true.
Well, I'm not sure about that, Tim. But going back a couple scenes to the Gangster scene, I do remember. Give me a flashback. You and I spent one evening or afternoon or something taking. Well, we cut wooden owls and painted them to look like cigarette butts, and we went around. You and I glued them to the sidewalks and gutters all over the Gangster scene. And the next day came in, and there's a custodial person in there scraping them up. And she said, "Can you believe people are smoking in your beautiful new bride?"
Wish they'd smoke more.
And in my head, I said, "Can you believe you just threw away $10,000 dollars of the fake cigarette butts?" Anyway, but no, the good news is it was so realistic that she believed it. The bad news is they told her we're supposed to be there. So.
Well, here we have something special. It's a list of the crew, but it looks like it's some of you guys are on this list too.
Why, so they are.
So Eric is the system, if you can't see it close enough, is the system alteration supervisor, and Brock, you're the outer space planner. Doug, you're still programming that witch.
Yep.
Tim, you're the interior detail expert.
Uh-huh.
This is so perfect. Paul Osterhout, he was supposed to be here this evening. He can't be, so he's missing, and he's missing on this.
So funny.
And Michael Sprout, you're the operation manual rewriter.
Oh, yeah, that was it. That's true.
In Imagineering, we're not allowed to sign our work, of course. Everything's designed by Walt Disney, basically. But we always try to leave a little something behind if we can get away with it.
Yeah.
So not only things like that screen, but we would, like on the fuel pipes and the steam pipes in that corridor, we would stencil like our mother's birthday with her initials and things like that, where it really looked authentic. But if you got right down to it, it's really us saying, look, we were here.
Yeah.
So we finally go from Alien to creepy crawlies with Indiana Jones. And Sala is in this too. And I've always wanted to interview John, who played Sala, because I always wanted to be like, do you know you're in AA and you're in 2 Disney attractions? Because he's in the ride at Disneyland, and he was in this one, which is just amazing. That must be the honor of it. But all the snakes, that's a lot of snakes. Like, did you have to program all of them so they would move, or was it just only a few just to make that magic happen?
I don't remember doing many snakes. Michael, do you? I mean, there were some.
I'm sure they weren't all animated.
No, they weren't. I remember. I mean, not every detail, but there was probably a third of them were animated, and they're very simple. They were just sort of move. But when your eyes looking at 100 snakes or more, you see one move, they all look moving. So it was really kind of an optical illusion, and they were very, very simple. We also borrowed the molds from the Jungle Cruise, from the king cobras that are in the Cambodian temples. Created the large cobras that are further on in the scene where the mummies start to appear. So those snakes were more animated than the other ones. But
and of course, that's true to the movie, because all those snakes weren't real in the movie either.
Right.
There were a lot of rubber snakes.
But we did though is when we were going to get the snakes, and Orlando Monti, who used to run the production department, he's retired now, but he's still around, another legend. But he said, "Oh, we'll call the people. We'll go to the place where Disneyland buys the rubber snakes they sell outside the Jungle Cruise. The souvenir snakes. I don't think they sell those anymore. But when we were all kids, that was the big thing to buy at Disneyland, was a rubber snake to hang your neck. So we went to this place in North Hollywood where they make that. And let's just say that they specialize in making rubber novelties. That was their bread and butter. I walked into their showroom. I know we keep this PG, and I will. Walked to the showroom. My 25-year-old, and one of their eyes popped really wide when I saw that they made some other things besides snakes at this place. But that's about the snakes.
Yeah. Another point about that particular scene, and this goes along with what Jim was talking about with the sort of hidden Mickeys, but the signature. But in doing the research for that scene, we got a lot of stills from the actual motion picture, that was shot. And in that, a lot of people don't know this, and we copied it and put it in there, just opposite where Indy and John Rice Davies are, lifting the
ark.
Big ark. Thank you. Well, the case for the ark. We didn't see the ark, but the case for the ark out. There are R2-D2 and C-3PO as some of the hieroglyphics on the wall. And so we were able to find them in the actual production stills and then go to that same spot in the show and put them in there just as they were in the original show, in the movie. So, if you know where to look in the movie, you might be able to spot them, although the camera's moving pretty quick. It's really kind of hard to do, but they put that in, and we copied that. That was their sort of hidden Mickey for that movie, and we copied that into ours.
And we added a Donald Duck and a Mickey Mouse on the hieroglyph also.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. We did.
Just for branding.
Hold on. Let me bring it up. Let me make it solo.
Oh, that's terrifying.
It's on the back of the
There it is.
Yes.
Wow.
Whoa.
I think another thing on that scene was, I mean, there are a couple figures throughout that show, besides the witch, that weren't really complicated, but I thought really nailed the character. And that Indiana Jones figure, Eric, I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was one thing I put in there where he actually looks to his right. It's kind of like looking out of the side of his eyes. And when he did that, it was Harrison Ford. It was like no other time did he look exactly like Harrison Ford, but that time. And I know it was hard to maintain because everything had to be just right. But for that original intent, I thought we really were able to, with pretty limited functions, make a very convincing Harrison Ford.
Yeah, and one thing that Doug that really pulled off that I liked was that we wanted the audience to not feel like the actors were looking at them and performing for them. That you were sort of sneaking onto the set and seeing these things as sort of special VIP guests. But when Harrison did the move that you put in, for a second, it looked like he's glancing at the audience, and it really makes a connection between you and that actor. And it's not obvious, like he's saying, like, "Hey, I do it," something like that. But
yeah,
it's that momentary, like he broke free for just a second to look at us, and it makes him feel more real.
Yeah, it's the fact that it wasn't obvious that made it look so good, right?
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yep. You're muted again.
I'm muted again. I keep doing this to myself. But I was just going to say, we move forward to the Lost Temple where, of course, the gangster cowboy cowgirl becomes one of the mummies, and our tour guide returns. Yay! And we're through the horror sequence. My question specifically about that was there no way to get any rights for that segment? Like, did you want to have a specific film represented, or was it always supposed to be mummies are representing just the horror genre in general?
Well, I think if I remember correctly, the whole idea of that scene, that's the rescue scene. And so it wasn't specific to any movie, just like the gangster shootout wasn't specific to a film there, and the Western bank robbery wasn't a specific film. They were just representation of what goes on in that genre. And so this was the same thing where you have the guy who's going to, once the jewel, the robber sees it, wants to get the jewel, and that's how you get your driver back. So it was a scene that was written and set up to provide that activity. It didn't come from a specific movie.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there would have been a problem, Eric. I don't remember if you remember, but getting the rights to anything by Universal was a problem. So we couldn't do the original Mummy. We couldn't do Dracula, Frankenstein, or the Wolfman, anything like that.
But Tim, you mentioned earlier that one thing that's good about Alien, it encapsulates horror and science fiction, and the sort of the mummy scene sort of captured adventure and horror at the same time. And what I was going to say is that we wanted, of course, as designers and creative people, wanted to put every single movie ever done on the face of the earth into that attraction. We had to pick and choose our favorites and get the ones that we could actually get the rights to, of course. And we also didn't want to say, okay, look to your right, it's Alien. Look to your left, look to your left. And so we had to have some timing and some pacing. And so we're thinking Raiders of the Lost Ark is a pretty short little scene if you really think apart with the Ark of the Covenant that we've just been talking about. But then if you add the rescue scene, which we called it the Uba scene, and then the mummy scene, it makes it a pretty substantial, long moment in cinema history. So it didn't feel like we needed to now we're in a house all of a sudden out of the jungle. That didn't really make any sense. And just then Tarzan, which you're coming to in a minute, and Casablanca also were great movies and great genres, but they didn't probably deserve as much time as, say, The Wizard of Oz or gangster films or Western films in general. So that's part of it too, is to figure out how much time and how much room do we give to each of these different properties and different genres.
Well, yeah, and also there was that issue of the timing of from when you're hijacked by the gangster or the bank robber, and then you get saved and you get your ride operator back. You need a certain amount of time for each of those scenes to play out, unknown to the other vehicle.
Right.
And that means the vehicle going out, they're already out and the door's closed, so they don't hear the same rescue happen to the second group, and vice versa. When you're coming in, you don't want to be hearing that rescue going on as you're getting there. So that was a lot of the stuff that Michael was referring to also in the rewrites of stuff where you had to shorten some stuff because we got to get the scene done quicker because other car's coming up, and if we don't get it there by a certain time, it's never going to get into the final scene together with when you all come together again back in Wizard of Oz. And so all that stuff just took a lot of time to figure out and do.
Right, and we all had long, luxurious, and dark manes of hair back then, and you could see with that timing, first to Brock, then to Michael, and then to the rest of us.
Yes.
So we go from Tarzan to Casablanca because I want to move forward to that witch because that's really important. So we're going to go to the witch because Doug, obviously, from the alien scene, we talked about the programming. So here's another clip for you guys to watch. Here we go. Hold on if it will play. Here we go.
Everybody helping everybody else.
Another key player in the Great Movie Ride team was computer programmer Doug Griffith.
He's been animating the audio animatronic figures through a series of computers and controls that brings them to life. And he's actually responsible for being sort of the acting coach for our stars and our assorted cast members.
I did look at films and try to get a feeling of what that person's personality was, pick up on little gestures that they did. From there, I would take that and try to do those in my program.
One of Doug's best performances was his programming of the witch from The Wizard of Oz.
Margaret Hamilton playing the Wicked Witch of the West in this show is one of the most technically advanced audio animatronic figures that we've built.
It could move much faster and stay more stable. Plus, it's a figure that has the most movement.
There she is, the Wicked Witch. So let's talk about the Wicked Witch of the West because it does seem like it was probably the hardest thing about the attraction.
Well, it was the newest thing. That witch was actually a prototype figure. It wasn't really changed out to actually standardized parts till months later. And that was part of a project that we worked with the University of Utah a couple years earlier to basically go from A1 figures, which were all hydraulic, the A100 figures, which what the witch was, the first of its kind, was also hydraulic, but it had a compliant system in it that enabled it to have force feedback. And what that meant was you could push on her and she would move. So she would give. The older figures and most of the other figures in the ride, if you pushed on them, there was 500 PSI you had to overcome before they would budge. And you can imagine as you're trying to move a figure fast and it's very stiff, you can't really move it all that fast at all or it starts to shake. With the witch, with a compliance system, everything gave just a little bit. All the joints gave just a little bit when there was a movement. So it's funny that footage, that's not some of her best animation because I think that was shot at Tahunga in California. And I really didn't get to work with that new technology and really wring it out until we were in the field. And it was interesting also that the techs that were setting, the way they actually set the figure up for me, they were actually down in the pit with the figure, pushing on the functions. The control cabinets were back in a room actually clear at the other end of the ride as you come into it. So they were keying radios to tell the guys how to set up electronically each function. And they were doing it all by feel. They would push on it and just say, hey, that's too stiff, adjust this function, or that's too sloppy. If you set it up too sloppy, it looked like a big noodle when it moved around. Like there wasn't enough of resistance. And if it was too much, if it wasn't enough of compliance in it, then it was very stiff, just like the old figures, and it shook, or you couldn't move it very fast. So there was an art both in the programming or the animation of it and the setting up of it. And this figure was the first of its kind. The Euro Pirates, which we ended up programming then right after, Great Movie Ride. That's when we really had a chance to really figure out how to use this new technology and put it through its paces. So I was very pleased with what I had at the end of all that time in the field with the witch. I remember getting down off the platform one night. They had me on a platform, so I was up high enough to see, like, from the guest level, who were in cars. But I took an old, it wasn't even mine. I don't even know where I got it. It was one of those old VHS cameras that looked like this giant thing people used to put on their shoulders. And I took the video of it right when I was finished. I still have that footage, but it never looked better from that point on. But yeah, what it could do was really pretty impressive. And I think that somebody mentioned it earlier, or maybe it was when we were talking in the green room. There's a theory in Uncanny Valley theory that's called a violation of expectation. And it's when something it looks like something, but it doesn't move like it looks like. And this was a great example of setting up an expectation for that figure, despite the fact that, it was the best technology we had in there. People expected that it could be possible that a real person could be on the set, right? Because the whole way through the ride, they're getting on and off the car. So that was an expectation that was set up. And she was green. Her color of skin was green, which is a bit caricatured, right? So you don't really pick it apart. Like, hey, that doesn't look just so human, because you don't see many green people skin or people with green skin, right? So it's all these little things. And she didn't have to change expression. She was mad all the time. And it took what I did on that was every day when I was done programming, I'd go home, I'd videotape it and go home at night and watch it over and over and over and over again. Because at some point in the process, I figured out that they look really bad. AA figures look really bad on video. So if you can make them look good on video, they're going to look really great, in the scene. And my wife to this day knows that dialogue, by heart, because she was listening to it for hours every night. And I remember having nightmares. I remember 300 Munchkins attacking me one night. I still remember that dream. You just get so into it. You get so, I call it going down the rabbit hole. A good animator will just concentrate. Michael can attest to this because he used to be an animator himself with AA figures.
Yeah, I used to dream about him all the time.
Bears. Yeah, Bears for Tokyo. Yeah.
Well,
it's especially true when you're doing the mouth programming, the lip sync. You find out that people don't talk in sync in reality. And it gets you mad when people don't do that. They don't move right.
Well, we're coming up to the last 5 minutes just with you guys. So I'm going to pitch this question to you guys because I'm going to do it with the other group as well. So my question is, if you could add any film, if the Great Movie Ride was still around, if you could add any film to the attraction now, what film would you choose? And we'll start with Tim, but I'll go so I can stall for you. I would love to see something like Moulin Rouge, because I think like the Can-Can dancers and just like another musical in there would be really, really fun. That or Forrest Gump, because then you could just have him like running through like different history scenes and it'll be like really quick. That would be fun too. So what do you think, Tim?
Well, I'm a big fan of a somewhat obscure, but not really obscure, British director named Michael Powell. And Michael Powell did a lot of films in brilliant Technicolor in the 40s and early 50s, including Thief of Baghdad, Stairway to Heaven, a lot of very strange fantasy films. So I would pick something by him, even though it's not in the top 10 of movies of all time, but that would be my personal choice.
Okay. Doug?
I would probably want a scene from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, maybe something with the Nazgul in and one of the elven characters.
I love it. Brock?
Well, unfortunately, Doug took my Right choice there.
Well, we'll do 2 for 2. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So he gets 2 votes. We're going to get that one, Doug.
2. Eric?
Well, one thing that we talked about, and today's technology, what Imagineers are doing today, it might even be possible, but doing something in the genre of James Bond or this kind of spy movie, that's something that we felt was really missing in that show. We talked about a stunt show based on those kinds of things. That ended up being Indiana Jones, but I think that would have been good. It probably wouldn't have been something that would have been very successful in 1989 to do in the kind of format that we were able to work with. But that's what I feel I want to add.
Okay. Chuck?
I think, I'm not sure what I would put in there, but I would guess that if the Great Movie Ride was being updated right now, we'd have a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy in there. And it'd be great to have Groot or Rocket pop out here or there and interface and with some of the scenes, or make something a little more dimensional out of the finale scene. So I think there was some great possibilities that we could have gone down with some of the current projects.
And Michael, go ahead. Our grand finale.
Well, I still miss the Ghostbusters, which we had originally planned to have in it, and that would have been a great, huge character, the Stay Puft Marshmallow guy.
Oh, cool.
And we didn't get the rights to that.
I heard it was because Bill Murray didn't want to do it, or is it just because it was the rights?
I don't know. We were told we had it at one point. Someone told us. One of those execs told us.
There's a lot of different things, but we were high level attraction we were doing, but very low level at the Walt Disney Company. So we weren't privy to a lot of those discussions.
Aw. Well, thank you guys for being on the show tonight. I know you guys are going to tune in on YouTube and maybe chat along from there for the second half. But it was so lovely to see all of you. So thank you so much for joining in on the fun.
Thank you,
Tammy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tammy.
Appreciate it.
Hopefully we'll have an in-person reunion.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Thank you very much. Nice to see all you guys.
Yeah.
Good to see you too. Goodbye, everybody.
Happy New Year.
See you in a bit. Happy New Year. So long. Farewell. I got to be careful because I might be hit for copyright. So let me go ahead and we're going to make room for some more people. And while we're doing that, let me share another clip with you guys while I'm bringing in the rest of the crew. So here's another video clip. Let's see if it will play. Here we go.
I want to leave that out, so we sort of selected the most horrifying movie monster that we could think of.
And so we said, what would be creepy about this? What would give them that feeling that even if they hadn't seen the movie Alien, that they would understand what the message was? So we decided the creature coming out of the ceiling and reaching down to grab them would be kind of fun.
They built the best of the Westerns here, too. A cowboy showdown which the Disney artists produced precisely, right down to the Duke's belt buckle.
Everyone I spoke to about the film knows exactly what John Wayne wore. You can't deviate. The belt buckle was requested by the family because after he had made Red River, he never wore any other belt buckle in any of his Western films. The Wayne family said it was beyond their expectations, and we were delighted because I think it was all done with a great deal of integrity.
If you got good sense, you'll...
I had heard the rumors that unfortunately the belt buckle was stolen after some people realized what it was and how priceless it was. So they had to replace it at some point. So that's a shame, but really cool to see that they donated something like that. Now I think we have everybody else ready to go for the rest of the evening. So here we go. Round 2. This is, so we did the gangster car scene for the first segment. Now we're going to do the cowboy cowgirl segment, the Western scene. So I'd like to welcome some more Imagineers and more fun people. So we first have George, and George isn't a stranger to my show. Hi, George. Can you hear me? Can I hear you?
I hear you fine.
I got worried. I was like, I couldn't hear you. And we've got Cory.
Hello.
Hey there.
Good to see you.
And another alumni from the show, Mark. Hi, Mark.
Cheers.
And then we have Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen.
Hello.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hello.
And finally, Julia. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, Cory.
You have all made it. Hello, good evening. Welcome to the second half of the show. I'm excited you guys are all here. So for the first half, we had everybody introduce themselves and what their role was. So let's start again with that. So George, why don't you start us off and tell us what you did for the attraction of the Great Movie Ride?
I was the musical director, sometimes composer, most times arranger, and various other things.
What about you, Cory?
I was the production designer, and that means starting in the design phase, supervise the design model, which in those days at Disney, that's where everybody went to work and hands-on designed the show, in 3 dimensions, which was great. And then followed the show through to set production and then finally into installation. So a lot of fun on all phases.
And Julia?
Yeah, I was a model maker. I guess they called us dimensional designers. I worked with Cory and with Paul, who I don't see here, who introduced me to you. And yeah, that's what I did. I built some of the models for the movie ride and then went on to some other parts of the park and then some other things there.
Yeah, Paul couldn't be here tonight, but he has something for me to show you guys that he wanted me to show you specifically so you could tell me the story, because I have no idea what it is and what the story is. So yes, he's here in spirit. Kathleen, what about you?
I'm the project coordinator. I was the gopher. I was the person that had helped everybody make sure that they knew what the other group was doing, and then coordinated distribution of the drawings, getting those into production when the sets were built, getting those to Florida, getting those installed, and making sure that everything came together in the end. So I was the gopher. Go get this. Go get that.
And finally, Mark.
I just want to add that if you messed with the coordinator, you were in big trouble on a project.
Exactly right.
They knew they had a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I served 2 functions on this project. I was the casting director for the voices that weren't being taken from the original films. There were 2 specific ones, Jimmy Cagney and John Wayne. And then I also handled some of the short film loops that were in the ride, including a couple of last-minute panics, I guess you would call them, that I had to do in the last 3 months of the project before it opened. You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Kathy?
You want to start out with that story? Because I was going to make our way backwards. So we went forwards with the attraction and all the scenes. I wanted to go backwards. So we could go with that Fantasia scene right before the Wizard of Oz. Do you want to talk about how that originally was Wizard of Oz?
Originally, the idea was because the vehicles went in a kind of a half circle to go into the Wizard of Oz scene. The concept was you would ride through the tornado as if you were in the tornado. You see out the window of the house. That film was done. It was complete, ready to go. And then the legal problem cropped up. The Ted Turner or whoever owned MGM said you can only have, I think it was 2 minutes, right, Kathy?
Right. Yeah, I think it was that much.
And they were measuring from one extreme to the other extreme. They were really picking the nit because they were trying to break the deal. Well, here we are a few months out from opening. So it was like, well, now what do we do? So Eric happened to be in town 3 months out from opening. And that was the first of the 2 and said, we've got to redo this. How about something? And we kicked it around and we came up with the idea of doing the Sorcerer's Apprentice scene from Fantasia. And I said, okay, is there a budget? No, just get it done. So I called Don Hahn. Yes, that Don Hahn.
Hi, Don.
Big deal movie producer now for Disney and did a lot of animated films. And I said, Don, I need your help. And so we got together and we said, okay, I was thinking maybe we could make a loop out of the Sorcerer's Apprentice when he's doing this. And yeah, maybe. He actually found the original drawings for that scene in the animation archive. And so we reanimated Fantasia into basically a 60-second loop where Mickey's doing this over and over, and the storm's coming up over and over, so we could put something in the scene again. So the fans they had in there for the tornado stayed. And that 3 months later, here's the film. Okay, great. So that was one of 2 emergency films we had to make. The other was on the finale film.
Oh.
They found that when the finale film that Chuck Workman had done wasn't long enough to cover the time that the cars would need to exit. And they didn't want the cars to really exit until they'd seen the finale film. So again, that same day, Eric's in my office and he gives me a little drawn placard of the Hollywood sign and said, we need you to fill this out with more film of maybe the Hollywood sign. I said, well, what do you mean fill it out? And he told me about how long he needed. And I said, okay, who's going to sign off on this? And he said, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and you've got an appointment for tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Okay, fine. So the next morning I go to Jeffrey's office. He's already been in there working the phones the way he did. And we sit down and we look at this. And I said, well, Eric says we should do this, but it's going to have to hold for, I don't remember, Kathy, wasn't it like almost a minute and a half or something like that? And
it was a long time for both.
It was a long
to get
period
in.
of time. And all I had was music. And Jeffrey looks at it, and then he looks at me and says, do you think this is any good? And I said, no, it's static. So he said, well, let's come up with something else. And he called, I don't remember the guy's name, over from publicity. He came right over. Again, it's 6-something in the morning. And we talked about it for about 10 minutes. And then Jeffrey says, okay, you guys go work it out. Show me something tomorrow. So I went back to that guy's office. I was in Jeffrey's office the next morning. We made some changes. He said, great, go get it made, Mark. And I went to a company in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Lamb & Company, that I'd done a little bit of work with. And off we went. I had to go to Minneapolis twice, and then we're just looking at videos with Jeffrey. He would make his Jeffrey comments. And I got it done, and I think it was about 3 weeks out. I sent Chuck Workman before that, I sent Chuck a work print, and then a finished work print, and then a final piece of film in the negative. It got done.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to remember when this was taking place, that really the behind the scenes of Hollywood was new. And for an attraction to go to all these different studios and ask for rights to use their film was something that the Hollywood had not done yet. So we were really breaking ground on some new ways of doing business for Hollywood and films and stuff. So the issue that came up with The Wizard of Oz is when it started to dawn on all the studios the money that could be made potentially in the future. So they started to get really tighter on the requirements for each of those scenes. So, and I know, Cory, when we were going through and they were selecting the appropriate genres and the movies that would represent those, we could have big flops and changes because of the legal negotiations that were going on. So it wasn't really like, oh, we're going to do, John Wayne, and we're going to, there was a lot of legal consequences to all of those decisions that were made.
And approvals too, including for the voices that were not the original ones.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I heard when I was just listening to the audio that the Ray Bolger line from the Scarecrow sounded like him, but it was you. I think you, Mark, we had discussed the Cowardly Lion is Bill Farmer, the voice of Goofy, and then somebody did Judy Garland. Is that the case, or was Ray Bolger?
I don't remember.
I don't remember who did Judy Garland, but yes, Bill did the Cowardly Lion. It's a question of a clean track. Not all studios were like Disney. Disney always kept their dialogue, music, and effects as separate tracks in storage. Not everybody did that. So you go to something like Wizard of Oz, if you can't get it clean, you can't use it. And they don't have their stuff. All the studios were basically cheap when it came to storing the stuff they might use. Whereas Disney was, sending their films all over the world with different voices for Mickey Mouse or whatever. And so they were smart in that they kept their dialogue and their music and their sound effects separate so they could be remixed for the new, if it's in Spanish or French or whatever, with whatever the dialogue is. Because if it was like in German, well, the German takes a lot longer than the English version of a piece of dialogue. So
yeah,
that was an issue.
Yeah, documentation on these films, especially the older ones like A Wizard of Oz, there's so, no chance ever of finding drawings of the sets from the film or something like that. But certainly with Raiders or something more contemporary, you'd find photographs and a lot more help sometimes.
So that was one of our questions in the audience. Jack Cleveland wrote, did you have any access to the original blueprints for the Munchkinland set when that portion of the ride was created?
We certainly did not. There were wonderful books and stories written about, experiences on the set and things like that. And you can find some prop accidents that happened to Margaret Hamilton, the witch, during filming of the film, but drawings, not so much.
I was requested by, I don't know if it came through you, Kathy, or from Eric. They wanted something to know the colors for Wizard of Oz. Well, as it turned out, MGM, for whatever reason, had made a new printing negative, brand new, perfect color off the original Technicolors. So I got a 35 millimeter print, and I had to swear up and down and sign a piece of paper that after everybody was done, they'd have to give me back whatever clips that I gave them. So we cut up little 2-frame slides for everyone and we documented who all got them. And then I got them all back and had to have that print destroyed. But when I got it, I'm going to have to cut this up. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Our design team got invited to see a brand new print at some point during it was an amazing experience. Someone like me, I grew up watching, the movie every year on TV, but I'd never seen it in the theater. It's just amazing.
Kathleen or Julia, who sent me these? I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was Deborah.
I did.
Oh,
they're a mix.
Thank you, Cory.
They're a mix of the 1-inch show model design tool that we created, and then I think interspersed in there with some of the other scenes were some marketing photographs. I believe anyone that was watching earlier, the first hour, Chuck explained how some of those marketing shots were created.
I sent you two model pictures, one of that same set from a different angle, and one of the Singing in the Rain model.
Love that.
Okay. Let me bring that up. Go ahead. Keep going.
I think what's interesting is, today how things are designed and built in the digital world. We really started with the models. The models were really the first thing from a design standpoint that Cory and Eric and the designers would work on, and from that, then Chuck and all the show and Brock and the show set designers would then put that onto drawings, using that as the foundation for our designs. And that would also be used for all of the different disciplines, the lighting designers, the special effects designers. All of those people would be in the models, making sure that their pieces of equipment and where the speakers were going to go, all of that was part of that process.
Crazy project.
I found one, Julia.
It's harder to see because it's small, but you can see all the flowers. I think those were bought at dollhouse stores that used to exist. And, we recreated the giant hollyhocks.
Oh, I love it.
But you also see the background scenics that were put in there too. And we used that as our 1-inch models for when we went and did the full scale scenics.
Exactly.
And actually, Chris Coakley, who was the painter on that, right? And he's part of the J.R. Backings family, the Coakley brothers. And so I ran across him later on in my film career. But he was really amazing.
Yeah. So all of the painting and all of that stuff was done in the models, and then that would be translated into full scale. I will tell you that the snakes that are in that scene, that was sort of a fun thing to do. We did go down to Disneyland. We bought up a whole bunch of the Jungle Cruise snakes and brought them back up to WDI. But because in this scene there is live fire, we had to make sure that the snakes were made out of fire retardant materials. And so that's why Eric and the team went to that specialty manufacturer and had them produce the snakes for us.
Oh, that was real fire. I was just computing what you said. I was like, I thought it was like an effect. So that was real fire in that with the fire torches?
Yep.
Oh my
Gas.
God.
Well, also in the bank, in the gangster scene and in the Western scene.
Oh,
Yes.
especially that, because when you're doing the Western scene, you can feel it like once you're there in the car, you can feel it on you, the heat. It's just magnificent. I missed that because I love doing that second part, which was the cowboy scene when you got to be in the second car. I loved that.
And I think the other thing is like it was a while ago and we didn't have the computer systems and the algorithms and stuff. So doing the timing for the show, each of the show scenes was all done by hand and on very long pieces of paper. And remember A and B show, and I'm sure George remembers all of that. You got the A show side and the B show. So there was two different lengths of music and audio for depending on which vehicle you were in. But that was all done, on paper and not in the computer at that time.
I would just want to say at this point that on Alien, since Paul Osterhout couldn't join us, that he did the bulk of the design work with Tim on all from the very rough model design work through that finished look, and it was just terrific.
Scary as anything. If you were watching the first part, I was telling everybody how frightened I was of that whole entire sequence. And we have some more pictures of that, of just the ride itself too, because there are so many wonderful little tidbits you guys put into each segment to make it very unique and full. Mark, do you have that story in regards to Clint Eastwood? Does everybody know that story about
Clint Eastwood was going to be silent, and I was like, thank God I didn't want to have to deal with that. No, it's John Wayne in the Western scene and Jimmy Cagney in the gangster scene. And
no, about Clint not being in the original attraction. Wasn't there supposed to be somebody else?
Clint Eastwood. Well, at some point, Clint Eastwood was in the attraction, but we hadn't gotten approvals.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, Frank
for a
Wells
long time. In fact, we were installing the show, and we weren't allowed to mention his name on the radio. Right. No one could hear, and Frank Wells, I think himself was trying to get a sign off on
Frank
it.
Ended up calling Clint because Frank and Clint was when Frank was the head of Warner Brothers, had made Clint's deal, which still exists. So somehow that relationship came into play, and except we could not voice him. It's just the silent figure.
Right. Well, we as the team couldn't even mention that he existed until we got the approvals. So we were all conditioned to keep our mouths shut about Clint Eastwood. And I think what happened is during offloading from the truck, they brought the figure out and dropped him. And so somebody got on the radio and said, Clint Eastwood, we dropped Clint Eastwood. So there was all kinds of mayhem trying to keep that quiet. But he's fine, and I believe he survived as long as the ride did.
When did the ride close?
2017, 2016?
17, yeah.
Oh, so pretty recently.
Yeah, not too long ago.
A couple of years ago, because they had to rip everything out of the inside and rebuild it for Mickey's Runaway Train. We should have had Kevin Rafferty here so we could all throw eggs at him.
Yeah, we can go down to his house later.
George, I wanted to. You picked out three segments. Yeah, there's Jimmy. You picked out three cues to play for us. So since we're at I have a gangster picture up. Do you want to play the gangster cue you have?
Yeah, let me just find it here.
While you're looking for it, isn't there a story with the tuxedo that James Cagney's wearing?
There's a story about the voice. In that,
I think it's his actual tuxedo that his wife gave us.
The voice was challenging to find, and it took a long time. I went through like 30 different voices, finally found what I really liked, and we had to send it to his wife. And so we shipped off a cassette to her. A few days later, get a call, and she identified herself and was like, "Okay, what'd you think?" And she goes, I played it in my car. Okay. I had to pull my car off the road. And we're like, uh-oh.
Oh, man.
I thought it was Jimmy talking to me. And we're like, yes. So that's the Jimmy Cagney voice story. I'll tell the John Wayne one later.
Okay, George, you ready?
Hey, Tammy, tell me which one again.
It's the gangster scene one. The one where you said it's playing underneath the hotel. I think that's the one that you mentioned. I'm trying to remember off the top of my.
This is the gangster. Fight the fight.
That's it. So you have to time this perfectly, George, to what the set sequence is, right?
Yeah, this is.
Muggsy, come back here. Season and choice.
I have no idea if that's too loud or too soft or whatever.
That was good.
That was good.
Enjoyed hearing it again without all the other guests talking.
Yeah.
You know, I think
that's what always killed me about the rides is that Harrington would come in. You know, we'd do all the music, and then Harrington would come in and put all the
effects,
in, and it's like
But you know, I think that listening to that, I think that shows. We forget that the layering of all the details that are included in here really make the emotional connection with the guest.
Right before that. Right before that cue, I'm just going to play just a few seconds of this. But
sure.
There was an open window when you first go into, I guess it's Chicago. Yeah, I only rode that ride maybe 4 times. I mean, I all I did was install the music and say that works, and then leave. So I learned so much tonight about this ride that I never knew. It's amazing.
Me too. Me too. Just being a small part of it, you don't always.
When you drive by an open window.
That's because of the shadow animation thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Yeah.
Speakeasy.
Yeah.
Who's there?
I had one of the world's best jazz clarinets players do that. Yeah.
I love it. I think that again because we were from the first group, we were talking right before we went on air, and we were talking about why it's still big and prominent with the fandom, and that's because there's so many, as you said, layers to this project. It's the sound, it's what's going on around you, and it really throws everything at you, the whole kitchen sink, but it works so nicely, and that's why it makes it so magical. And I think that's why we all miss it a lot.
Yeah, the shadow animation thing wasn't actually animation. It was live action against a screen. And Ellen Lichtward's husband shot that, Kathy.
You know, I think what's really, for me, in our long career is that those were film projectors that we were using.
Yeah.
Those were not video projectors
Yeah.
like you do today in digital projection. That was film. And I mean, Fantasia or the hurricane scene was a 70 millimeter projector.
Yeah.
Well, this whole ride was one of the really the last of the classic Disney, with many figures ride throughs, and
Right.
yeah, I don't think there's another one since this, right?
I have to
Yeah.
tell you what I think is so funny. When we did the Munchkins, there were speakers all over that set.
Yes.
Yes. Munchkin here and
Yeah.
wherever. And we finished the mix, and somebody came in and said, "Hey, we got a speaker over here, and there's nothing coming out of it, right?" and it was supposed to be a solo Munchkin coming out of that one speaker. And how we had done that was we put tape on the tape machine and slowed it down, and everybody sang to that key that the tape played back at. And then when you take the tape off, it comes back up to the right speed. And it's not like this. Well, so we're going, what the hell do we do? And so my wife came in, who happens to be a viola player, and she's not a singer at all, right? And she came in and did the Munchkin voice without any of that stuff. So she's the soloist on that. I always thought that was great. Glad to include my wife in something.
That's so funny. Well, let's bring, this is the picture that Paul sent me, Paul Osterhout, who worked on the alien sequence. So he said to show this to you guys and you could tell me the story. Okay, so here we go. The Great Movie Ride, crew with no name. Go ahead, put me in your ride.
Well, that was the Clint Eastwood. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was the big secret. Yeah.
Right. Because he was actually installed in the attraction, and we did not have a signed document for legal rights to use him. He had a sack on him.
Yeah.
He was covered.
Very true.
He was covered in almost until very close before we opened. I mean, it really took Frank Wells calling Clint to move that process through the paperwork.
And poor Art Frazier, he had to get all those legal documents done. I don't know where he is now, but he was going nuts with that one.
He has PTSD somewhere. Yeah.
I think Cinemagique from Paris was probably the worst.
Even worse.
I mean, the most
Harder.
challenging of legal rights.
Challenging.
I'm wearing a shirt tonight.
Oh, awesome.
Because I don't have a Great Movie Ride shirt. We were talking about that off air, that there really is no merch to the Great Movie Ride, which is probably one of the reasons why, is because
rights
of
issues.
the rights issues.
Yeah,
yes.
Rights became a big problem, and so you couldn't sell toys of Clint Eastwood or any of those things or anything.
They were there was very narrow usage rights for each of those films.
I heard a story where they actually sent attorneys in with stopwatches.
That was for Wizard of Oz. That's what led to that whole mess.
Yes.
And I had to match that musically. I mean, I couldn't go beyond 29 and a half seconds.
That was it.
Were you there, Kathy, when the attorneys rode the ride and timed it?
Yeah,
I think I stepped away from that at that particular time, but I was part of that. I knew. I mean, it was the revelation that we're a little bit longer than what we negotiated. So it just shows you the quality of designers and thinkers and everybody who came together to find a good solution for that. Late, so far into the attraction, and
the solution
that's the fun part.
The solution was send Eric back to California, have him go see Mark. Mark will do it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, but he did have some solutions for you. So
Yes, he had a
but you still had to do it. But at least we knew where we were
He
going.
literally said, "I'm back here mainly to see you." And I, what? I'm trying to go. You're 3 months out from opening. What are you doing here? You know.
I mean, we were challenged, right? We had
Oh,
this
yeah.
much time. We had a curve, and we had a big wind machine that was used on Hollywood, sets to cause the wind, and so that was pretty our constraint. What can you put in here? And we have a 70mm projector.
All I know is that tornado film was so well done. It was so
very
beautiful.
well done.
And
tears. And the music was good too.
Oh, and I had to make sure the prints and the negatives were destroyed because of that whole thing.
Yes.
Art Frazier said, "You have to sign a document that says you destroyed them, Mark." And man, because it was gorgeous.
It was a good substitute, though. So
it was a good end.
I just
well,
we had the
Is there
cow
any
and
film?
everything.
Is there any film of the ride?
I actually want to show some. You want to see a little bit of a clip? Here we
The
go.
most entertaining of all Disney-MGM Studios theme park attractions is the Great Movie Ride inside the Chinese Theater. It was the first idea that surfaced from the original concept team to take guests through the most golden moments in film history and actually put them in the middle of the scenes. Of course, the first obstacle was deciding which of all the moments are most.
Yeah.
So that's a little clip of some of the films that made it into the attraction. And so we were at Fantasia, we were at Wizard of Oz, and going backwards, we have Casablanca and we have Tarzan. I remember at one point, because George of the Jungle came out, they actually had to add a line to the script saying, "No, it's not George of the Jungle, it's Tarzan," which was hilarious because everybody thought it was George of the Jungle. So I remember that.
Mark,
So-
you were talking about separation of voice from effects, from music, etc. I remember doing Singing in the Rain and hearing the old musical track of his coming through his earphones, and I wasn't in sync with it.
Yeah.
And it drove me crazy. I mean, we were, like a quarter of a beat off. It just drove me nuts, man, because I could hear what was in the studio coming through his earphones, and I was putting in a new.
You had to put in
new orchestras behind Casablanca and Chim Chim Cherry and Singing in the Rain.
I don't know why they wouldn't keep separations on those. I mean, obviously Mary Poppins had it.
I thought it was Lucas that was able to do that.
I don't know. If anybody could have pulled it off with the technology back then, it could have been Ben Burt and the people at Lucasfilm and Skywalker Sound, because
I kept thinking that. Yeah, that maybe.
Because that stuff was not clean coming from most of the studios. It was from that far back. You got one soundtrack.
Yeah, I had the same thing with the same problem with the last movie, Casablanca.
Yeah,
I could hear their old score.
Yeah, you couldn't do anything about it. It's there, and
but it had been diminished down to nothing.
Yeah, because they would go through and very carefully. They were able to go through and very carefully clean out most of the stuff except for the dialogue. But you're still limited to the fact that when the actual voice is, but when the actual voice is speaking, if there was music under it, it's there.
Yeah,
and it's just that's the way the films were made back then. Other than Disney, for the most part. So
here's a picture. Do you guys see some familiar faces?
Yeah, that was our team picture in front of us. Yep.
I'm gonna have to look at all this because.
That was in front of that. Cory, were you involved in the plane set for Casablanca?
Sure. What about it? we took its
That-
tail off, you know.
I know, but we went to Texas, and it actually was one of the planes that was used in Casablanca.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of controversy over whether, you know, it was in a flyover. Yeah, I know I think there's still some question about whether or was even in that film. But, you know, it's the same exact model of Lockheed.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that was, you know, one of the things is the team, you know, researched and found a plane that we could use.
Right.
That was the same model and that we modified. And the team.
Well, we had to modify a lot of things. Humphrey Bogart turned out to be quite a bit shorter than we imagined.
Yeah.
We had to cheat on this or that to make it a good show.
Yes.
A legend.
Oh, I forgot
it's
about
not a legend. It's a fact. He was shorter than her. And he had to have apple boxes in almost all the scenes he's in with her so that you would think he's the same height.
I think we found that out about Alan Ladd in a lot of the Westerns too. He used apple crates quite often.
You should have used Randolph Scott. He's tall.
Yeah.
Well,
I offered our boss Marty Sklar an apple crate because he's a bit short. I'm short, but he was shorter than I was, and I offered him an apple crate to stand on to see the model, and I almost lost my job.
Oh, I can only see Marty's face. Look at you.
And then I bet he wrote the line down of you offering an apple crate and put it on his wall.
It could have been
permanently scarred. I was. Yes.
Well, I have a question from a friend of mine. His name is Ken. He says, as a set designer myself, I often am asked, am I sad when a show comes down and the set, my art goes away for good? How do you feel about the removal of your work on this attraction?
Well, yes, I'm sad, and I've had it happen so many times. I've learned to just roll with it, I guess. But as you can hear from our stories, there's so much that goes into this process that isn't even seen by guests in the final show. So it becomes a real personal effort, and so much of our lives is wrapped up in the 3 years, you know, that it takes to 5 years to make some of these shows. So it's very sad to see them go, but you know, you always hope there's another one coming along.
Just something about the set design while you're asking, or while your friend is asking. So during that time was the writer's strike of 1988, and Bill Creber came on, and his associate Diane Wager, who was the first female set designer in the film industry. And that I met them and was asked to give them a tour when they first started of the overall model of the park, since our area was right across the way, and I think we were winding down on the movie ride. And actually that's how I met them, and later on knew them, and Diane actually got me my first film job. So it was fortuitous. But just to say, I think Debbie Rager isn't here, right? But she was part of that team, and they did all the drawings based on our models. And that was the set design department. So we were the dimensional design department, which, as Kathy was saying, you really design the show in the model, whereas in the film business, it's the opposite. You design it in drawings, and then sometimes they'll build a model. Not so much anymore. It's mostly digital, but they still do it sometimes.
Yeah, the models are very important for the sight lines because you don't know where the guests actually are. And particularly with a ride like that, where it's huge ride vehicles, you got to judge it from like the extremes, not just the middle ideal seat. And that can be interesting. I've seen some interesting experience back then at WDI and some of the models, and you look at them, and then somebody stands in the, I don't want to call it the wrong place, the right place for a corner, and realizes, oh shit, we're going to see around the corner there and we don't want to, or something like that. And they have to rework the model. So, I mean, I know they do it all in computers now, but it's the same principle. You really need to see it from the guest's perspectives, which could be quite a few depending on the size of the ride vehicle or the time they're in a scene. You know, you don't want a ride vehicle leaving a scene and everything stops. So
And,
Yeah, we
and I
did
think that
this.
was
We did this attraction in old school where we
right.
we build a paper model, we build a finished model to keep studying all these sight lines that you're mentioning, Mark, and then we actually mock up each scene full
Yeah.
scale with the
Yeah.
real set pieces in a large separate facility, and they build a wooden version of the ride vehicle, and 20 people push you through, and you're like
Yeah.
looking at everything you can possibly see front and back, trying to catch all those things.
I think it's important that even the speed of the doors between the scenes,
Right.
and
Yeah.
the music transitions from one scene to the next scene, all of those things were much more complex than they appear today. But those all had to be
Really?
taken into. There was a lot of study, a lot of work on this, getting those doors to open as quickly as possible and closing as quickly as possible as the vehicle has cleared it, so that the next scene could start.
And the doors couldn't make
Exactly.
any noise either.
Correct. And they
I
were
remember
big.
I worked on one ride, and they had to cut the budget, and they took the sound effect, the sound absorber out.
Oh,
And everywhere, ah!
Yeah, well, I've had that on a couple of film projects where the project manager doesn't tell you that he cut all the sound absorption out of the theater, and then you go in and you listen to it and go, it's a friggin' cathedral echo chamber, and that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, somebody says they want to know if you guys have seen the COVID 2020 Great Movie Ride cast production that they put together to
No.
reenact the entire ride. Because I put it in the group chat, but I didn't know if everybody saw it.
I've watched. I actually saw part of it the other day, and I go, okay, I get what they're doing. It was kind of interesting. So,
yeah.
Well, I hadn't heard about it until you sent that link out, Mark. Thank you so much. It's an amazing production. People pick up on something that inspires them to make it a personal interpretation of. It's such a wonderful thing to see. Even it reminds me now. Actually, I forgot this. Maybe I wanted to forget this, but when we were installing the Western scene, and people get so enthusiastic when they're, in this case, there was a security guard that was stationed in there for weeks. And one morning she says to me, I realized what your Western scene's missing. You'll be so pleasantly surprised when you get there. And I really got a chill. I didn't know what to expect. And I walked in, and she lived on horse country, and had brought in buckets of horse manure. And the scene, because she honestly believed that would help. So she was reassigned, and we had to clean it up, obviously.
So you didn't want to put a Sewelson in there.
No, that would have been probably more hygienic, but
Hey, Tammy, since we're talking the Western scene, I'm going to tell the story of the John Wayne voice real quick.
Sure.
It was another voice we had a hard time matching, and we had to match it. And again, went through a lot of voices. And to be honest, I was at my wit's end. I happened to be talking to an agent that I needed to call. I think it was BJ Ward's agent, because I needed to bring her in to do a safety spiel. And he goes, what else are you looking for? And I said, I'm having a problem finding a matching voice for John Wayne. He said, really? And I said, yeah, send me the sides. I know somebody that might be able to do that. Okay. And trust me, the word had gone out. Nobody had anybody. So I sent the short script out to him. A couple days later, this cassette tape shows up, and it just says John Wayne audition. I put it in the cassette, and I listen, and I swear it was John Wayne. It's so dead on in my mind. So the gentleman says the line, and then he drops out a character and says Chad Everett for John Wayne. And that's how Chad Everett became the John Wayne voice. How's that for a word? Yeah, the guy who's the star of Medical Center was the voice of John Wayne. Apparently, he would do it at parties, and that's how the agent knew about it. And that just shows you
pretty
a
great
weird world, So that's the John Wayne voice story, and it got approved by Patrick and the family. And
I love it. Well, speaking of John Wayne, George, do you want to play the Western piece, the Western music piece? And while you're doing that, I'm going to bring up some pictures These are some behind the scenes pictures. And I'll just play these while you're playing the track as well too, if that's okay. These are some behind the scenes pictures when you guys were making the attraction.
You don't miss it. Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
This goes on forever, so tell me when.
We're doing good.
I was just thinking that Busby Berkeley scene. I wonder how it would survive in today's culture.
That's Lincoln, Mallorca playing that.
Incredible.
That's the swing version.
Oh, finally. Oh, that's Desiree. Oh my God.
Oh, what's that?
I wanted to take that one home. Just kidding.
All right, fade it out.
Cory, do you remember the story of getting that elephant in the building?
No.
I might not. What was the story, Kathy?
It was a little taller than the opening.
Oh.
So it took some time, but we ended up having to take the elephant, bend him down, scoot his head in, and then bring the head up on the other side of the header. That took an entire day. Actually, I think that set us back like 2 days.
Because then you have to get it from there to the scene.
Once it was in the building, it was fine.
Yeah.
It was clear. It was getting it into the original opening from exterior to inside the building.
Oh,
Kathleen, when that was happening, were you? Did you look like this?
No,
Wow.
What's interesting is when I forgot. We did have there was a WDI designer who was actually the model for the Bugsley Berkeley girls, and I can't remember her name.
Melissa.
Melissa.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I mean, and that's the kind of fun part about it, is because so much stuff that we had, we have done. There's a lot of Imagineers who are part of the attraction in small ways.
So this is a question I have, because another cast member said that on one of the Gangster panels, like the back of the panel, this was written, earthquake proven, was written by an Imagineer. Were either of you or any of you there for this?
Yeah,
I was on the freeway. I was on the freeway.
I was at Tahunga. We were building sets, and there was the earthquake at 7:42 a.m.
That was the Whittier Memorial. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking to Eric Jacobson, who was in the first group. He was the show producer, and the head of the Tahunga facility, Matt Pretty, who's a really big guy. Well over 6 feet tall. And the earthquake happened, and the three of us looked at each other, and our reaction was to all run forward. So we ran into each other, and I ended up on the ground because I'm the smallest one. So yeah, it was a little humiliating, but nobody got hurt.
I remember that one because I was on the freeway in East LA, and Kirk Winteroff was right behind me in his truck. And stop and go traffic, and all of a sudden my car starts bouncing, and I thought it was Kirk trying to push me to get moving.
I was in my car on the way to work, and it was my first earthquake because I had moved from the Midwest, and my car was rocking, and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But of course, when I got to work, everybody told me, and then it really there was a lot of damage. I was living in San Gabriel at the time, and there was a lot of broken things. I didn't know the date though.
Yeah.
Remember it
I was
well.
on the freeway. I thought I had a flat tire, and then
Yeah.
I thought, no, wait a minute, I'm in stop and go traffic. I'm not moving.
There you go.
I think the interesting thing was after we all stopped, and we started going again, and there were aftershocks. You could actually see the freeway, a wave in the concrete.
Yeah.
Oh
wow. A little bit. Yeah.
But we were all on the way because we were going to have a review of one of the scene that morning. So
I guess that's why it made it.
it made it through it. It was a big shaker. It did do a lot of damage at that time, but
yeah.
Well, this is the most recent picture from the November Destination D by Ashley Carter. She posted it on Twitter. And so there's all these hats from the audio animatronics that they did keep. So which hat would you guys want to take home?
The one on the middle front.
I
I
think
like
the scarecrow.
bottom left.
I like the scarecrow. That was a fun scene.
You'd be a good scarecrow, Kathy. I could see you dancing.
Yeah. I only had What was it? What did the scarecrow want? A brain.
He wanted a heart.
I need a brain.
Oh, brain.
No, brain.
The Tin Man wanted a heart.
Oh, now there's a Twitter page that posts behind the scenes pictures. I guess maybe this was when they were taking the ride apart. So there's John Wayne.
On the horse.
Yeah.
I hate seeing those.
But then you get to see the intricacies of how this audio animatronic is working. It's pretty amazing because we don't, as the audience, don't get the chance to see that up close. So these are some really great shots. This is from WDW Tales. He is a former tour guide on the ride, and he has some really great shots.
You know, the art, we actually got the art from the film to copy. So that was actually pretty fun. Yeah.
That was
you
a big
had
deal.
a picture earlier of our props master Jeff Wildman, and he was able to copy the dimensions and the details right off of it.
It's pretty amazing to see these pictures come out later because, again, as we said, there's so many different things going on in the attraction. Now, here's a recent picture. This is one of the feet that's featured in the Indiana Jones ride that's now in Star Wars Land.
How funny.
Oh, cool.
So in some way, the Great Movie Ride continues to live on.
Crazy.
That's cool.
It really is. And with the last group, since we're coming to a close now, I thank you guys very much for being on this. This has been like so much fun and hearing all these stories. I was asking the last group what film nowadays, if the Great Movie Ride was still around and you could choose anything without a budget being a worry, what film would you have loved to have seen in the Great Movie Ride?
Blade Runner.
Blade
Runner.
Ooh, I like that one, Julia.
That's a good one.
I would choose one of the Doris Day, Rock Hudson movies.
There you go.
Like Pillow Talk, Technicolor extravaganza. Just put them in the bed together or something. I don't know. It would be such a cool scene to see them in their heyday. That's me.
No.
Superhero movies are taking such a dominant part of all the movies being made. It seems like that's a genre that's missing.
Yeah. Now
from the ride when it closed, but and Disney certainly has a large share of films to choose from. Marvel, say.
Yeah.
How about Bambi?
Bambi, a cartoon. Ooh.
Yeah. That's where I would have gone into an animation. Toy Story, some of the Pixar.
Toy Story,
but because I know as you get as the whole storytelling about it, it was like great movie. It was about the movies. It was great moments at the movies when we first started, and then it got very simple. The movie ride, the Great Movie Ride. Actually, they just wanted to say the movie ride, and and Eric and I think, really went to bat to say, let's at least make it the great movie ride. So it's not just a movie ride, it's the great movie ride. So for me, I think animation would be the thing that is missing, because animation today has great story.
Well, especially
methods.
since it was from Disney. You know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which scene from Bambi? This will say a lot.
The beginning.
with Thumper and
The,
Flower.
the saddest part.
Yeah.
No, George.
Your mother can no longer be with you.
Yes.
And we were with the first group, we were talking off air about the ride that now has replaced the great movie ride, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And here's a little tribute that's in the attraction. The ride is so fast you might miss it, and I missed it the first time around. I saw it the second time around, but there's a couple of tributes, but this one I found was the funniest, the Great Moving Ride, which it is.
That's a Rafferty. And that's a Rafferty.
That's got Kevin all over it.
That's KR. That's KR.
He may not have drawn it, but he definitely came up with the idea and probably drew it on a napkin.
I believe so.
Well, one last question for you guys before we sign off is, if you could go back into the attraction before they kind of took everything out, what is one piece, costume, prop, maybe a set that you would like to take back with you if you had any storage room, a lot of storage room?
The fan from the tornado scene.
Oh my God. That was so noisy.
I guess the ruby slipper.
Summer?
Yes,
I guess-
at the back of my house, it needs it.
I'd take the.
I would get the alien that comes out of the ceiling and make him my alarm clock.
That did scare me.
That's great.
I'll tell you that.
It scared the hell out of me one night when I was in there by myself.
Yes.
Very scary.
I would take the hollyhocks out of Wizard of Oz. The flowers.
Oh, those were gorgeous. And
They were.
Julia, you said the ruby slippers?
Probably, yeah. This is funny because it's just, well, you saw the picture, but just like this part of her legs, because sticking out from under the house with the ruby slippers. Yeah, I'd probably like stick them on a wall or something.
Yeah.
What about you, George?
Me?
Yeah.
Pick a movie. Nothing. Okay.
I think that the witch in the Wizard of Oz was an incredible figure that Doug Griffith animated, and that was the state of the art, and he made her so alive. And it was such a joy to work with Doug, and he had an incredible eye to be able to bring those animated figures to life, and people would question whether or not that was a actor or an animated figure.
It was so well done. Good for him. Okay.
Well, and for all of you too, because you all added something to that attraction, which made it as popular as it was, and it still is so popular amongst many of us who really truly miss it dearly. So thank you on behalf of all of us big fans. We love what you did, and it always made a mark on us. The alien scene will be forever the scariest moment in any theme park attraction I have ever been on. So, thank you guys so much for being a part of this tonight. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Good to see you
Bye,
all.
Mark. Bye, Cory. It's good to see
Bye-bye.
you guys.
Bye.
George.
And I'll play one more clip
I
to
do.
kind of lead us out. So here we go. One last behind the scenes clip.
Finally, all the great movie ride props, figures, and backdrops were crated and shipped cross country to
Delta.
Orlando, where they took their meticulously pre-planned places
That's right,
in
they
the
were the
90,000
first. Yeah, we
square
did that.
foot Chinese theater building. Supervision of the colossal project rested on the shoulders of show producer Eric Jacobson.
I felt like a blind person feeling my way through this because there's so many things that I've had to act on intuition through. But I've received such tremendous support from all the people that have other expertise or these other technical areas that I don't know very much about. That's the neat thing about this organization is.
Love the hair.
Yeah, all the people. It was great.
Yeah.
I think, and you saw in those team pictures the number of people that made this the Great Movie Ride. It's not just all of us.
It's a collective effort, and
yeah.
And it lives on. Still, the building is there, and I love the new attraction. I think it's wonderful, but you can't top perfection. So we'll just leave it at that. But thank you guys so much, and thank you to everybody who was watching this evening. We have a lot of people in the group chat just saying that they really enjoyed everything. Steven says, "Wonderful show as always. Great job. Thank you, Steven." Puck says thank you, and Beth says this was a fantastic presentation. Thank you guys so much. It's been a joy to have you all on the show. So thank you so much, and hopefully we'll have an in-person reunion with you guys, and then we'll let you reenact everything for us. George will be playing in the background.
Yeah,
I'll conduct.
Yes, that would be perfect.
Yes, you will.
Okay.
Have a good evening, you guys.
Nice Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. We'll see you at the movies.